please? Why does he always use this thing to get around?
Super Mario 64. We've sang its praises to death. But if you don't bring up how it single-handedly inspired so many platformers and basically became the blueprint for the genre to follow for quite some time, then you'll get a bunch of comments asking you, why didn't you talk about how it single-handedly inspired so many platformers and basically became the blueprint for the genre to follow for quite some time, you hack of a gamer, I can do a better job than you! And a bunch of words I'd have to censor. Before Mario 64, if you wanted 3D games, you had titles such as Star Fox or Sonic 3D Blast, which I think we can all spot the differences here. Sure, Crash Bandicoot came out a little earlier than Mario 64, but I've always looked at it as a 2.5D platformer since it was still heavily on rails. Nights into Dreams had some 3D roaming parts to it and came out even sooner. But, dear home, there is nothing special about the 3D roaming parts of Nights into Dreams. I don't know why I felt compelled to use an outdated way to tell you this. Next time, I'll send a telegram. Yep, Mario kind of showed everyone how it was done. Some games became better because of Mario 64, and some games wish they could steal that secret formula. At the time it was coming out, I only saw screenshots of it, which, to my younger self, didn't tell me anything at all. Nintendo must have heard me, because they mailed me a promo VHS tape showcasing Mario 64, Pilot Wing 64, and Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, as well as a montage of upcoming games. I still wonder how on earth they found me! Guys, I wasn't even subscribed to Nintendo Power back then! The only thing I can think of is when we took our malfunctioning Super Nintendo in personally to get it fixed. And I don't think we gave them our address, but I wasn't the one who signed the papers, I just paid for the repairs.
We know the Nintendo ninjas are real, and they've been around for a while. What I want to know is, how on earth did I get on their good side when I was just a kid?
Back to the promo tape. This video showed the game in motion and I was blown away. There's almost nothing to compare it to these days. But for those who grew up back then, you lived during one of the biggest impacts and innovations in gaming history, and there may never be another moment like it. You truly had to be there to understand how big of a deal it was. And the version we'll be looking at is the best worst one. Sharp, clean visuals, rumble support, and it was a version that was exclusive to Japan for a while. So, why does this one suck? Well, Mario now says bye-bye instead of so long, King Bowser. And the backwards long jump glitch was removed, which means speedrunners want to shoot this one on sight. I'm not a speedrunner, and it's hard to hear him in the first version, so I have no issues with playing the 3D All-Stars entry. Development on the game started all the way back on the Super Nintendo, and to be honest, this could get a little confusing, and I might be proven wrong in the future, but going off of what we know, Miyamoto was thinking about the possibility of using the Super FX chip to make the game, but decided to develop it for the N64 because it had more buttons. The difference in power apparently meant nothing to him. It was all about those sweet, sweet buttons on a controller he wasn't too happy with. Now for the contradicting part. The game was never an actual development for the Super Nintendo. Dylan Cuthbert, who worked on Star Fox and X, said that Super Mario FX was the code name for the FX chip and not the actual name of a game in development, as there never was a game being made called Super Mario FX. So, development started on the Super Nintendo, but only in conceptual form, and maybe a little testing, but I'm not entirely sure.
That's what I got out of that mess. How about you?
It's actually kind of funny learning that Sega, of all people, had a bit of a hand in Mario 64's development, both with a modified Sega controller that they were using until they finally came up with the N64 controller, and a double camera system that Sega had patented, and Nintendo just prayed that they would get away with.
Nintendo stole from Sega!
No. I'm sure they at least paid for the controller, which means they can use it however they please, as long as they don't sell it as their own or expect Sega to fix it if it broke, and the double camera system they came up with without knowing Sega already made it. At that point, they just gambled on whether they would get sued or not.
Yes, I am aware that a lot of this has already been well known because of videos like this one. It's part of the history and it can't be helped. But here's something that was only partially covered in that video that I do find interesting.
They needed more time to develop the game, and they were given it without hesitation. While I can't say this is the sole reason as to why the N64 itself was delayed from March 1996 to September 1996, it's my own educated speculation that it most certainly was. The original release date for the Nintendo 64 was supposed to come out Christmas 1995, then it got delayed till March 1996, and then they asked for more time, and it was delayed again until September 1996. Think about it, one game getting delayed delays the entire system! Why? Because it only had 2 launch titles in the US, Japan got 3, and Europe was rewarded for their patience. But it had a slow trickle of games to come after it. What, were they only going to launch the system with Pilot Wing 64 and have it carry the console for nearly 7 months? That ain't gonna work! The other option would have been rushing out other games, and that's equally as dumb!
Yeah, there wasn't a huge slew of games after the September 1996 release, but at least they were ready when they were ready. I consider this to be one of, if not the best delay in gaming history! That almost sounds like a list I should make. But I need a lot of help with that one.
Let's go!
How many of us know this part by heart?
Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach.
You heard me at please!
And when Mario gets there and enters the castle, you're told to scram! And it's hard not to make this joke. Fun fact, this is Gabe Newell's favorite non-Valve game. Moving a little further, a toad tells you that everyone is trapped within the walls of the castle, and every room is either blocked by star power or you need a key. Except for the ones that can't count, so feel free to walk in. And you immediately take notice of the giant painting on the wall, with the only logical thing to do is to jump through it. Makes sense to me. You ever see a painting in the wild and just wanted to dive right in? Jumping through a random wall doesn't make sense to me at all. Going through the paintings and other areas takes you to different worlds where you have to find as many of the power stars as possible that are hidden within them, which will allow you to unlock more worlds, so you can collect more stars until you have enough to take on Bowser to get a key to open the basement of the castle that have more worlds that have more stars, so you can take on Bowser again to get a key for the upper level that have more worlds with more stars, so you can open up 2 more doors, so you can take on Bowser for the 3rd and final time, and man, that background and music still gives me chills to this day! Mario was never really one for telling stories at this point, with the exception of RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. But going for the minimalist approach, the game feels more inviting for new people to play. Pun highly intended. Heck, there were even times where the game wants to help guide you and then ask, how's it going otherwise? You know that meme that says, but no one ever asks how they are? This game cares, man. It cares about you.
Let's go!
I'm gonna try and simplify this as best as I can. Your main objective is to collect power stars. No, that's a star, man, that makes you invincible, and they're not in this game. This is a power star.
Imagine if I tried to make this complicated!
In fact, the only power-up to return is the 1-up mushroom, if that even counts, but we'll get there later. There are 6 stars in each of the 15 worlds, with a bonus 7 star for collecting 100 coins in them. The basic 6 stars are mission-based, with a name that's either a clue, or it's not even trying to hide anything. There are also stars hidden within the castle, so make sure to talk to every toad and tackle every rabbit you come across.
Now I could list off the worlds by their names, but I think it's more fun to just describe them with a few words.
We have a dried up battlefield.
Free owl rides!
Can the eel just go away? Snowy slides. I'll never play the piano again. Underground labyrinth. Get into the volcano! It's safer there! I don't like sand. Or that vulture. Another water level. A second snow level. A third water level? Stupid monkey. Little Big Planet. What time is it? And I'm taking this shortcut every chance I get. Most of them play differently from each other, or may have a gimmick to them such as Wet Dry World's water level switches, or Tiny Huge Islands. Well, the name is right there. Most of them are distinct from each other, giving them their own identity. The only ones that might look similar are the 2 snow levels. But even then, one of them has a giant snowman in the middle, and the other has a broken snowman. Both of them can be quite annoying. For the most part, each world has different objectives, but some do share similar goals such as beat up a boss, finish first in a race, find 5 secrets, but all of them have collect 8 red coins. I prefer to do any other mission that I can, besides collecting 100 coins, as they come off as way more of a chore. The worlds are somewhat small in scale, but I can keep giving them a number of passes for all the stuff the game did. I'm worried it's going to get away with murder one day. And getting around these places is made easier when Mario has so many moves now. We knew him as Jumpman before, but now he's just showing off. He does so many varieties with just one concept. Triple jump, long jump, back jump, reverse jump, jump from a pole you were climbing up on, and wall-to-wall jump. All of these are utilized well, except for the triple jump and wall-to-wall jump. The triple jump isn't bad, but you have to have enough space in order to do it properly, since you can't just stand in one spot and keep pushing it unless you have a certain power-up. And most of the other high jumps will usually accomplish the same result without much effort. The wall-to-wall jump can be very finicky and almost feels random as to when it works. It's hard to tell if I have to hit jump before or after I hit the wall. For comparison, the triple jump is as easy as 1, 2, 3. For wall-to-wall jump, solve for X. And while you can still jump on enemies, Mario has learned a few offensive moves to make him a bit more well-rounded. But let's be real, most people will either use the jump kick or the dive grab. The 1-2 kick is useful for smaller enemies like the bullies, the ground pound is useful for certain blocks, columns, poles, and doing it on giant Goombas that will give off a blue coin that are worth 5 coins. You can grab certain objects or characters in the game and even throw most of them, which is the only way to defeat Bowser, and while it can get a little dizzy, it's still enjoyable, until you miss. And then there's 2 moves that I'm sure many people either never use or forgot about. The sweep kick and the slide kick. I don't even know if that's their name! Or if I got the other names wrong too, but
Does anyone here actually care about that?
you pretty much only use these moves to show off. Oh, and he can crawl, which is useful for mainly 2 parts of the game. The igloo, and a more controlled way to sneak up on his sleeping fighter number 70, who can also be taken out by a dive grab, or just being really quick. Speaking of which, I want to bring up the analog stick and how it controls not only where you're going, but also how fast you're going. Depending on how much you push on it, it either allows you to tiptoe, walk carefully, or sprint. Back in the day, most characters only went at 1 speed when pushing on a D-pad and would either need a specific button, a double press, an ability, an item, etc. to go faster. The D-pad could only understand that 1 movement of speed, whereas the analog stick had a far better understanding of how fast or slow you wanted the character to move. Though it does feel wrong when I'm not pushing the control stick at full force, you know? Not only does it feel like Mario has more freedom of speed and movement and can defend himself better than before without a power-up, he can now take more damage! He has 8 health points, and it also works for your air meter underwater. Yep, no more holding your breath forever. Now you have lungs like everyone else! Or kind of like everyone else, as normal humans don't get more air, or health by grabbing coins. Though imagine breaking your legs from a high fall, and all you had to do was grab some money and you're good to go. Same thing for being underwater, and a coin is as good as air. Kinda makes the bubbles there seem a bit pointless. You can also get more health by finding a heart and spinning it as fast as you can. It's also quite amusing that if you take damage and you're near water that isn't in Snowman's Land, then you might as well jump in since it restores your health, because remember, the power meter also reflects your air meter. That's fine with me since realism can ruin my fun!
I don't need it to be realistic, just believable within the context of the worlds that the characters are in. Is it realistic that a hat with wings lets you fly? No! Is it believable that in a world where people are trapped within the walls by star power, that a hat can turn you metal? Sure, why not?
Speaking of which, there's 3 of them that have to be unlocked by finding their secret location and then hitting a switch. There's also... well, it's not really a power-up, but it kinda feels like one. The wing cap is by far my favorite of the 3.5. By being shot out of a cannon that only opens after talking to a red bob-omb within the worlds, or doing the triple jump even by standing in one place, Mario can soar through the air. You lose altitude pretty quickly, and there are a few moments where it feels like it's fighting back. But other than that... whee! The metal cap makes you invincible, except from high fall damage. You don't need to breathe, you can run through fire and walk underwater, and enemies die on contact. I don't really see it used that much, but the few moments you do, make you wish you could spend a little more time with it. The vanish cap lets you run through... whatever it's cool with and avoid attacks from enemies. This one rarely shows up, and honestly, I felt like it was kind of underutilized, situational, and not really something that shows up on a lot of favorite Mario power-ups list. Spoiler for that list, it didn't even get 1 vote. And then there's the... does this really count as a power-up? Hit a block that contains a KoopaShell, or jump on a Koopa, and then use their shell to... have fun! It runs over smaller enemies, you can surf over water and hazardous surfaces, you're a little faster, it's the best way to bully the bullies, you can use it underwater to swim faster and control slightly better, but if you crash into something or use it for too long underwater, then that's the end of your joyride. I can understand that gamers who are growing up with far larger and more refined 3D worlds can have a hard time understanding why something as, shall we say, primitive as Mario 64 can be looked at so fondly upon. Remember, everyone has their first steps, and for 3D platformers, this was no different. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there were games before this that were using 3D but weren't exactly designed with 3D platforming or environmental interaction. Mario tried to bring elements from his past and use them in a way that makes sense in a 3D landscape. Heck, just being able to look around the area from Mario's perspective really made you appreciate just how alive the worlds felt, despite being tiny by today's standards. It gave a sense of scope and depth that not a lot of games had back then. The only other games I can think of doing that were the first-person shooters. So, basically Castle Wolfenstein and Doom. Overall, the game gives you a lot to have fun with in terms of moves, power-ups, and missions. It's kind of hard to put down once you start playing it, which is somewhat of a good segue into the next part.
Let's go!
I feel like just talking about this game is enough to not have to make a pro section. It's hard to list off all the things I liked about it because that's basically everything that isn't in the cons section. From that first time I was able to play as Mario and experience what this game had to offer, it just felt so, for the lack of a better word, magical.
Going back and replaying it, it still retains that element of pure fun, such as doing a long jump and seeing if I squashed a Goomba, or going from one move to another right away, because remember, this was Mario before, and this is Mario after getting another dimension. Heck, this game is responsible for finally giving Mario some real personality!
I'm tired.
Or at least makes him feel more like a character. This isn't revolutionary, he's not the first character to do these things, but even his few lines and expressions just feel so right on the money, and his idle animations and reactions are burned into our membranes. This wasn't the first time Charles Martinet voiced Mario, but no one cares about Mario's fundamentals, whereas this is a classic.
It's me, Mario!
Even just messing around with Mario's head on the title screen can make me feel like I haven't lost my innocence yet. I enjoy starting a new file and doing stars out of order because I have the benefit of already knowing what to do. Getting the Chain Chomp star before taking on King Bob-omb feels more like a requirement to me now. Yes, some stars can only be done when selected, such as Racing Koopa the Quick, but just about every other star can be gotten out of order, and you can even replay it again if you want to, giving the game some good replay value. With the exception of Dire Dire Docks, there's something going on here. I used to think that if you got the star, the sub would never appear on that save file again, but Discord user Keyblade Overlord pointed out that once you beat Bowser in the second showdown, that's when the sub never comes back. But while that sub is docked, the pulls will not show up for the 8 red coins, and this door remains closed until it leaves. It's kind of like the green gloomy mist that's in Jolly Roger's Bay. Once you get the star in the sunken ship, it disappears. You can get any other star you can before that one, and the mist is still there, but once you get that sunken treasure, it's all cleared up, as if you defeated some kind of ancient curse in the area or something. It makes it feel like there's some unexplored lore here, and that's not even going over the invisible boat that's in the air.
Man, I went way off track there, didn't I? Let's get back to what I was talking about before. Going out of order.
It's like messing with the game and there's no consequences for it. In fact, they almost encourage you to do that. Speaking of which, I love how the wing cap can let me skip certain parts of a level. Screw you, log rolling over the lava! Me have brain! Even just taking a KoopaShell for a ride, which isn't needed to beat any mission except the 8 red coins in the second snow level, is just a joy to experience. Even the weakest one, the Vanish Cap, isn't terrible, just underutilized. The levels themselves have different varieties to them, and while they may share some backgrounds, textures, and music, they all feel different enough from each other. I think the only ones I don't like are the water levels cause water, except for Jolly Roger Bay, that has a certain charm to it and no instant death traps. Shifting Sandland because I agree with Anakin, and I have a love-hate relationship with the last two, Tick-Tock Clock and Rainbow Ride. They both feel creative, or at least their platforming parts do, and depending on what time it is determines the speed of the platforms inside the clock. But they do have bottomless pits underneath you the whole time, and they can take forever to get to certain areas. We'll be covering that in the appropriate spot. Tiny Huge Island is one of the more memorable places, even if it is basically ripped from Mario 3. Going to the left entrance takes you to the version where everything is glitchable, and going to the right makes you feel insecure. It's not just the differing size that I like about it, it's manipulating the size to make certain parts easier to get around. Though I'd have to say Snowman's Land is probably my favorite in the game, as you can get through all of it rather quickly and 100% out of order. Even the little scares in this game I enjoy. Most players will say the eel and the piano scarred their childhoods. I see where they're coming from, but I say the real threat is this one. The giant fish that appears in the water of Tiny Huge Island. One bite is all it takes. The others got nothing on that. The soundtrack does its job so well, it deserves a promotion every time it's brought up. They get the notes just right for what it wants to do. Tranquil Waters. Tread with caution. Let's have some fun! It nails everything it wants to do. There will always be missions I'll enjoy more than others, and some I hold pretty dear to me. The graphics are nice, let's put it that way. It's simplistic in a lot of areas, but it more than gets the job done. Though it is funny to see Mario looking weird when the camera is at the right placement. I believe it's done so the amount of polygons is reduced, allowing the game to run better, or something like that. I just can't believe it's called low poly. Pretty straightforward, easy to remember. How the heck did I not know that? Thanks to Ginga Man Prime and Dan for helping me find the actual term. Even if you were to play this for the first time after all the other 3D Mario games, I think you would still say that this game felt memorable and special. Once I start playing it, another week goes by in a blink.
I don't have a problem. I can quit anytime I want. See?
There are even secrets to this day that I didn't know about, such as running around those poles brings out more coins. And then I discovered that the game actually does hint at that, but only if you make it to the really difficult to land on island in Tiny Huge Island. That makes some 100-coin challenges a little easier, but not enough to avoid the next section.
Let's go!
Just because you're revolutionary doesn't mean you're free of criticism. Sorry, but we can't accept those for this part. But a lot of them barely hold any weight. I have some really small gripes with this game, like tiny, insignificant problems that barely get in the way. Let's go over the one gripe I'm sure many of us can agree on.
Select your objective, clear it, and get kicked out.
I feel like I just got fired for doing my job right.
Let's take Hazy Maze Cave for example. The little swimming area here is where you'll have to come back to 3 times. You can't get the star that's right here, then go through the metal door to unlock the metal cap, which will then let you hit the underwater switch to get another star that's right next to where you unlock the metal cap! This may not seem like that big of a deal, and it's done so that it can load in certain objectives that wouldn't normally be there. But tell me how you feel about seeing 2 stars and only being able to get 1. I'm sure it goes like... That wasn't even the worst case offender. I'd say that goes to Rainbow Ride, and to a lesser extent, TikTok Clock. I appreciate and enjoy them for being abstract and having a more original feel to them, but I recommend not trying to do everything in one sit-down playthrough there, as you will have to revisit areas multiple times. You think riding this magic carpet is fun? Does it look fun to you? Imagine doing that 3 times! Once for the star on the left, and twice for the stars on the right, and you might even have to go to both sides to get the 100-coin star! Speaking of which, if there are any stars that I find a pain in the everything to get, it is the 8 red coin stars and the 100 coin stars. The only 8 red coins I like getting are the shifting tiles in Lethal Lava Land, the secret water area, Amazed in a Maze, and Chaos Control! As those are usually in small areas, making it easier to grab them. If they had spread those coins all over the areas, especially in the last 2 worlds, I would probably hate those stages 100%. Collecting 100 coins to get a star is the only time you're not kicked out of a stage. Why is this one so special? Which means you might as well do this one in conjunction with the 8 red coins, since those are worth 2 coins each. Sure, why not? Double the pain, quarter of the fun. The one level I have nightmares about getting the 100 coins in is Dire Docks, and it's right here, because if you get too close, you'll have to go all the way back to the level and do it again, and you'll probably fail again.
Why not just do a 100-coin challenge with the door closed then?
Remember how I said the poles don't show up until the submarine is gone? Which also means you can't hit the switch for the blue coins, which makes collecting 100 coins so much easier. Unless there's some way to wall jump up there, this would be impossible to do without cheats. There are other missions that have a trial and error type of feel to them, such as No Man's Head. I'll either do this right on my first try by sheer dumb luck, or I keep wondering what is the deal with this one? Spinning Bowser around makes aiming a bit dizzy and disorienting. Good thing the first two battles only need you to hit them once. The cannon is something I'm a little iffy with, especially with this mission, because you have no idea if you're going to hit the mark or the bottomless pit. And getting all the stars in the game gets you a reward that honestly feels pointless. It's cool to see Yoshi in his typo, but what are you gonna do with those extra 100 lives? I can't spend them all in one place! And to conclude this little mini list, the wall jumping. There's a reason there's a spinning heart located beneath many of these areas. But, as I have said, these are minor issues that don't hold the game back in the slightest. Sure, backtracking and some of the missions are annoying, but thankfully, you don't have to do them all to beat the game. You can get just about any of them in nearly any order you want. Most people will complain about the camera not really cooperating, but I never really had a moment where I got angrier than just letting out a small grunt. There are moments where there's a narrow path and the camera hates you, but if you switch to the Mario Head one and move forward, it is surprisingly effective. Glad they never got sued for that. And then, to be fair, this isn't the game's fault, but I'm still going to bring them up. There's the rumors that never died. Trying to avoid the icebergs here, this video is long enough as it is. But there are at least 3 topics that I do want to cover. I personally hate the sign saying the gentle swimming beast might eat you. When I first read that, I actually thought it would eat me. The giant fish does, why wouldn't this one? But it never did, no matter how many times I abused its back. Such slanderous lies trying to condemn an innocent being! I expect that from Twitter, but from this game? That sign fooled me, but apparently this one fooled others into thinking there was an actual ghoul medal in the game. I mean, this one is just trying to be funny with a pun. This one could be sued for slander. And then there's the big one. The absence of Luigi, and the wild goose chase of how to unlock him. Some people thought all you needed to do was collect 2,401 coins in order to unlock the missing Mario brother because the plaque in the courtyard said L is real 2401. And all I can say is, are you blind? It clearly says Giant Dead Dodongo. When it sees red, a new way to go will be open. Clear as day!
But I just keep telling myself, there's no such thing as Luigi.
Oh yeah.
Where the heck have you been, Green Mario?
Well, I should probably answer that before moving on to the next part. Luigi was intended for Mario 64, but was cut months before release. There's a model for him in the game, but it's not from data mining. It's from something that happened illegally, and I don't feel like showing it while the all-seeing eye of Nintendo is still watching me from somewhere.
You're better off just watching this video to get that information.
But at the very least, he made it into the DS remake along with 2 other characters and a bunch of stuff and changes. Fortunately, I won't have to go over everything again, but there's a ton to cover here, so let's head into it.
Let's go.
This was first shown along with the Nintendo DS at E3 2004 under the name Super Mario 64x4, and man, I really wish they kept that name. It just sounds better to me and more original. But no, gotta slap the DS on there for branding. It was a launch title for the Nintendo DS later that same year, and while I didn't find a reason as to why they remade Mario 64, I'm just going to assume it was to show off the power of a handheld system by running a 3D platformer on it. Just by looking at this game, you can finally solve this age-old riddle. It's so strange, but yeah, the models look like they're more up-to-date models with a little more detail, and then look so blurry and unpolished at the same time. When the game is up close, it looks really impressive! And then it looks worse and worse the further away it gets! Playing it on an original DS, the game actually looks really good! And playing it with the screen enlarged on the Wii U looks horrifying! Which is why I decided to actually shrink the footage so it doesn't look like I'm staring at moving blocks. They've kept most of the game intact, but changed a few things in order to make room for all the additions they put in, and added way more than I can keep track of. Please don't come after me if I miss something, such as the snowman having an expression, cause there's a lot and it would probably take me another year to make sure I got everything. It begins the same as the original, except Mario is joined by Luigi and Wario, with Yoshi taking a nap. As you would expect, if a character is sleeping at the start of a game, that's who you'll start as. Later, Yoshi wakes up exactly where Mario, Luigi, and Wario were. Yes, he went from the castle to the yard. That is one heck of a nap trick. I wanted to try the technique for myself. I did not like the results. Nope. Later, you can unlock everyone else, and they all play slightly different from each other, such as Luigi with his jumps, or Wario being a bit slower but more powerful. And Yoshi can turn enemies into homing eggs. That ability alone makes him my favorite character to play as. The rest of you can go back to your rooms. He can even start missions with a choice of hat to wear, so you don't have to keep swapping between them in their dressing rooms. The only reason I'll change to Mario is because he's the only one that can wall jump, thanks to 12334 for correcting me on that, and Bowser won't let anyone else in to play kill the other guy in the room in the final showdown.
He had no problems before with letting other people challenge him, but now we have to follow the original script.
Each character also gets their own power-up to use, courtesy of this flower, and each character uses it differently, such as Luigi becomes the see-through guy. Wario gets even tougher with the metal coat, and can even go up against strong winds now. Yoshi can spit fire, and also by eating fire as well. And Mario brings this back from Super Mario World. There's also a mushroom that acts like the Giga Mushroom, which is always nice to find in this game. However, Mario is the only one that can fly if the flower is a feather, and flying is way smoother than the original. For the record, I still remember seeing early footage of the game where all the characters could fly, and in the final release they can only fly in the multiplayer mode. Special thanks to Alex S. Warrior for correcting me on that. If you need another character to use said power-ups, there's usually a hat somewhere around the area that turns them into that character while still making grunts as their original selves, and it will never not be weird yet kind of funny. They also added some new smaller areas, with most of them having boss fights, and beating them is how you unlock the other characters. The bottom screen can act as a map and can help you find certain items. Some worlds get some added features or new parts to them. 30 new stars to collect, which are usually just find 5 silver stars, or hit the switch and get there in time. It's still a bit strange that the first world removed the star that's in the floating island, but had you fight King Babam twice. You'll need to find some more stars before taking on Bowser. You only have to unlock one power-up to unlock all of them, and the minigames which you unlock by tackling rabbits or by trying to eat them. Finding booze, making paths, find the wanted criminal. So many happily wasted hours here! There's even some local multiplayer modes that can work off of one copy of that game. I never really got to enjoy this mode because by the time the DS was becoming popular, no one carried around a copy of 64DS anymore, so I didn't get to play against anyone that wasn't my left or right hand. And for those who want to know if you can play the Wii U versus the DS version, no, for some reason they don't talk to each other here. The main objective is to get more stars than everyone else in specifically selected courses, and for some reason you could still play them on your own, but there's no option to add bots. I guess they wanted you to have a feeling of what the mode felt like while reminding you that friends are a good thing to have. I feel like there was only one issue with the game, but it's a big one! The controls! I hate controlling characters in 3D with a D-pad. It always felt unnatural and just wrong to me! It feels like they really tried to get this to work, but it's not a good one-to-one ratio. Playing the original and playing the DS version, it feels like night and day. One is so good with its controls, and the other... Thank goodness I love these minigames so much. It's funny to think that the game actually got a little better since the 3DS and Wii U don't have those issues, but it doesn't fix the run button problem. Because the 64 version used an analog stick, it could determine how slow or fast a character was going on its own. Remember how I kept making a big deal about that? The D-pad gets confused before taking off on its own, so they made a run button. That's not a new thing to the Mario series, but try doing a running triple jump into a dive grab and tell me all games should feel this miserable! Moving the camera manually is also now a pain since you can't use the buttons to move the camera, with the exception of the L button to center it right behind you. You can use the touchscreen to move the camera, and it feels intrusive and imposing. I understand stopping to move the camera in Ape Escape, all the other buttons were taken, but here, it's the same principle, but it feels like a downgrade that you just had to scream into a paper bag in order to move on. You can also use the touchscreen to move a character, and you quickly realize this option sucks. You want to try to see if you can figure it out, but you realize no one, not even you, will care about how it actually works, and if you're right-handed, good luck jumping. What could they have done to fix this? My suggestion would be to make the camera options with the touchscreen only. I know I complained about that a bit, but it's the only way this setup can work. Then have either the L or R button be the one that does the running. At least that way you don't have to switch between 3 buttons so quickly, and almost keeps the same level of simplicity as the original game. And no, you can't assign buttons on the Wii U version. They don't allow that with this game. Alright, I think that'll do for focusing on the DS version for now.
Ah, they're still watching me!
Let's go.
Despite some minor annoyances, Super Mario 64 deserves all the credit it deserves, and then some.
It technically wasn't the first 3D platformer, but it was the first one to get things so right, and others followed its example for a long time. Even with other games out there like Odyssey that made the improvements, I still have urges to go back and play this, and it's always satisfying every time I do. It's got a couple of minor issues, but nothing that really takes away from the overall enjoyment. It's a timeless classic that you'll come back to for more. A 5 out of 5. It's a great game to add to your collection.
The DS version, while I still enjoy this, doesn't hold up as well as the original. But that's not to say I think this is bad, far from it. I just wish that they had waited until the 3DS and the 2DS before coming out with this.
While you can play this on the 3DS and Wii U, it obviously doesn't remove the run button, and the controls can still feel a bit iffy. I adore the amount of extra content, and that alone is something I find worthy of not downright hating it. But in terms of which one feels better, there's no contest. It's playable, but frustrating to master. If they ever decide to actually remake the original version again, then I hope they keep all the new stuff from the DS remake as well. A 4 out of 5, a couple of flaws, but overall a good game. There are some other changes that happen after getting 120 stars. If you talk with Yoshi, your triple jumps will now sparkle, and the penguin you race against gets huge! How did Big Chungus become a meme but not this guy? Oh, and the same also happens in the DS version after getting 150 stars, but you don't get 100 lives, it's just 3 in the red item box, and your triple jumps do not sparkle. For those curious, there is no green mist in the DS version at all, and the sub still doesn't come back after beating Bowser the second time. Hope that solved your curiosity. There are thankfully some levels where it's easier to get 100 coins, most specifically the ones that have slides in them. Just don't fall off of them and you should be fine. Is it just me, or do the stars in the DS version look like they hate you? Seriously, what kind of compression did they do to make them look like this? There are instances where Mario will lose his hat, and if that happens, you'll take extra damage. So make sure you get your hat back as soon as you can. In case you're wondering, you can't be metal and see-through at the same time in Mario 64 DS, so for that one mission, you can swim there as just see-through Luigi. Turns out you only need the invisible cap in the original as well. Kind of disappointing to know that, honestly. You know, if there was one thing I wish they did for the power-ups, it would be to give them a meter to tell us how much longer they'll last. I'm not a big fan of saying, "Attention passengers, we hope you've said all your prayers as we are about to plummet to the ground below. Thank you for flying Air Mario!" Oh, one more secret I almost forgot about. Depending on how high or low you jump into the painting for Wet Dry World will determine the water level at the start of the mission. I like little details like that give you a bit more control over how you want to play a stage.
I just wish that they had waited until the 3DS and the DS before coming out with this. The line is 2DS, not DS! They already made it for the 143rd take! Can't we fire him?
He does too many jobs around here. It would cost more to replace him.
Thank you so much for watching my review. See you next time.